Think psychopathic traits only exist in killers and con artists? Think again. Neuroscientists now say up to 1 in 25 people may share their traits, and they're often the most successful ones around you. Researchers at Oxford and UC Irvine found that selective empathy, strategic charm, and emotional mimicry let them blend in perfectly, caring when it helps them, cold when it costs them. The danger? You don't realize it until they've already taken what they came for. Your trust. These aren't monsters in shadows. They're polished, promoted, applauded. Psychopathy isn't rare. It's rewarded. While you're assuming that everyone who seems functional and socially acceptable is psychologically healthy, you might be missing subtle but significant traits that research suggests exist on a spectrum. These aren't full-blown psychopaths, but people with enough psychopathic characteristics to potentially manipulate, exploit, or harm others while maintaining perfectly normal social facades. What I'm about to share draws from the same researchers: Dr. Kevin Dutton at Oxford University, Dr. James Fallon at UC Irvine, and Dr. Robert Hare's research showing that psychopathic traits exist on a continuum. You can either learn to recognize these 5 research-documented traits or continue assuming that anyone who functions well socially is psychologically safe to trust completely. Today, I'm revealing 5 traits that represent what scientists call subclinical psychopathy, characteristics that don't meet the threshold for clinical diagnosis, but can still create significant interpersonal harm when present in seemingly normal individuals. Trait 1. Selective empathy. The first hidden trait is selective empathy, the ability to turn empathetic responses on and off strategically rather than experiencing them as automatic emotional reaction. Dr. James Fallon's neuroscience research reveals that some individuals can activate empathetic responses when it serves their purposes, but easily suppress them when empathy would interfere with their goals. His brain imaging studies show this represents a fundamental difference from normal empathy, which operates more automatically and consistently. These individuals often appear highly empathetic in social situations where it benefits them, comforting friends, showing concern for colleagues, demonstrating care for family members. However, they can completely shut off these responses when someone's suffering conflicts with their personal interests. Dr. Kevin Dutton's research suggests this selective empathy is particularly common among successful professionals in competitive fields, individuals who can be genuinely caring in personal relationships while showing remarkable callousness in business contexts. The pattern: they demonstrate intense empathy for people they care about or who can benefit them, while showing surprising indifference to the suffering of those they consider irrelevant to their goals. Normal comparison. Psychologically healthy individuals experience empathy more consistently across situations, even when it's inconvenient, because their empathetic responses operate automatically. Trait 2. Strategic charm. The second hidden trait is strategic charm, the ability to deploy charisma and likability as calculated tools for achieving specific outcomes, rather than as natural expressions of genuine warmth. Dr. Robert Hare's research indicates that some individuals can produce highly convincing displays of charm, humor, and social grace that feel authentic to recipients, but serve primarily instrumental purposes rather than reflecting genuine affection or interest. People with this trait often receive feedback that they're naturally charismatic or incredibly charming, but their charm tends to be situational and goal-oriented rather than consistent across all social contexts. This strategic charm often appears most intensely during initial relationship phases or when the individual needs something specific: job interviews, romantic pursuits, business negotiations, or social situations where making positive impressions serves their interests. The indicator: their charm may feel slightly performed or may disappear entirely in situations where it serves no strategic purpose, such as interactions with service workers or people who cannot provide them with desired resources. The authenticity test. Pay attention to whether someone's charm remains consistent across different social contexts and with different types of people, or whether it appears and disappears based on what they might gain from each interaction. Trait 3. Emotional mimicry. The third hidden trait is emotional mimicry, the ability to observe and replicate appropriate emotional responses without actually experiencing the underlying feelings that typically generate those expressions. Dr. James Fallon's neuroscience studies reveal that some individuals can produce convincing displays of emotions like guilt, remorse, joy, or concern by observing what responses are expected and replicating them accurately, even when brain imaging shows minimal activation in regions associated with genuine emotional experience. People with this trait often appear emotionally appropriate and responsive in social situations, but their emotional expressions may be based more on learned social scripts than on authentic internal experiences. This emotional mimicry can be so sophisticated that even close friends and family members may not recognize that the person's emotional responses are primarily performative rather than genuinely felt. The pattern: they often display emotions that seem slightly delayed, overly perfect for the situation, or inconsistent with their behavior when they think no one is observing. The detection challenge: emotional mimicry can be particularly difficult to identify because these individuals often study social and emotional norms carefully, making their performances highly convincing. Trait 4: calculated risk-taking. The fourth hidden trait is calculated risk-taking, the ability to pursue potentially harmful or unethical actions with unusual emotional detachment when they believe the benefits outweigh the potential consequences. Dr. Kevin Dutton's research suggests that some individuals can engage in behaviors that would cause significant anxiety or moral distress in most people, because they process risk and ethical considerations primarily through cost-benefit analysis rather than emotional and moral intuition. People with this trait often appear bold, confident, and successful in competitive environments because they can pursue opportunities that others might avoid due to ethical concerns or emotional discomfort with potential negative outcomes. This calculated risk-taking often extends to interpersonal relationships, where they may be willing to lie, manipulate, or exploit others when they determine that the benefits to themselves outweigh the potential harm to others. The professional context: they often excel in high-pressure environments where emotional detachment provides competitive advantages. But this same trait may create problems in personal relationships where emotional consideration and moral sensitivity are important. The moral calculation: they may engage in behaviors that violate social norms or hurt others, not because they're unaware of the potential harm, but because they've calculated that the personal benefits justify the risks. Trait 5: grandiose self-perception. The fifth hidden trait is grandiose self-perception, an inflated sense of their own abilities, importance, and entitlement that remains largely hidden behind socially appropriate modesty and self-deprecation. Dr. Robert Hare's research indicates that some individuals maintain internal beliefs about their superiority and special status while presenting themselves publicly as humble, self-aware, or appropriately confident, creating a disconnect between their private self-concept and their social presentation. People with this trait often believe they're more intelligent, attractive, capable, or deserving than others, but they've learned to express these beliefs in socially acceptable ways that don't trigger obvious negative reactions. This grandiose self-perception often manifests as subtle entitlement behaviors, expecting special treatment, becoming irritated when they don't receive what they consider appropriate recognition, or assuming that rules apply differently. The manifestation: this trait often appears as surprise or irritation when they face normal consequences, don't receive expected recognition, or are treated the same as everyone else in situations where they believe their special qualities should grant them preferential treatment. The hidden superiority: they may privately view others as less intelligent or capable while maintaining public personas that appear appropriately respectful and collaborative. Research-based protection strategies: when you identify potential subclinical psychopathic traits in someone important to your life, research suggests 5 specific strategies. 1. Boundary reinforcement. People with these traits often test and push boundaries, so maintain clear, consistent limits and follow through with stated consequences when boundaries are violated. 2. Emotional protection. Limit emotional vulnerability with individuals who show these traits. Share personal information strategically rather than openly, and maintain strong support networks outside of the relationship. 3. Documentation practice. Keep records of concerning interactions and patterns of behavior, because individuals with these traits may use reality distortion techniques that can make you question your own perception. 4. Professional consultation. Seek guidance from mental health professionals if you're in a significant relationship with someone who consistently displays multiple subclinical psychopathic traits. 5. Strategic disengagement. If someone displays multiple traits and shows no genuine motivation to address their impact on others, the healthiest approach may be reducing contact and emotional investment. The 5 hidden traits summarized. Remember, the research documented characteristics that may indicate subclinical psychopathic traits are: Trait 1. Selective empathy, strategic activation and deactivation of empathetic responses. Trait 2. Strategic charm, calculated deployment of charisma for specific outcomes. Trait 3. Emotional mimicry, learned emotional responses without genuine internal experience. Trait 4. Calculated risk-taking, emotional detachment when pursuing potentially harmful goals. Trait 5. Grandiose self-perception, hidden sense of superiority and special entitlement. These traits don't necessarily indicate clinical psychopathy, but research suggests they can create significant challenges in relationships and may indicate fundamental differences in emotional and moral processing. The key insight from current research is that psychopathic characteristics exist on a spectrum. Understanding this spectrum can help you make more informed decisions about trust, emotional investment, and relationship boundaries with people in your life. Knowledge of these patterns isn't meant to make you suspicious of everyone, but to help you recognize when someone's emotional and moral processing may be significantly different from your own, allowing you to adjust your expectations and protective strategies accordingly. If recognizing these patterns in yourself has raised concerns, please remember that self-awareness is the first step toward positive change, and mental health professionals can provide valuable guidance.